I'm so happy you could make it tonight. Putting together tonight's Salon would not have been possible without Margaret from the Muse Network, so thank you so much. Tonight's topic, the art of public spaces, is inspired by my travels in Italy and Colombia. But before I get into the stuff of public space, I want to talk about Hamiltonian Hall. This is the perfect venue for our topic. You see, it's a prime example of a public space that's been preserved and reimagined beyond its original use. The building actually was built in 1875 when it was a church. It still looks like a church. And then it was the headquarters for a painters union, and then it was purchased by the Hamiltonian Club for $8,000, and it remains in their care today. It's also one of the last standing examples of Carpenter's Gothic style in the world, so it's a very special place. Before we discuss anything else, we need to ask, what are public spaces? This seems obvious, but it's not. Especially seeing as we've moved so far away from the model of the ancient agora or civic marketplace of, how does it stop? There we go. There we go. Yeah, so we've moved really far away from the idea of the civic marketplace and the covered arcades of 19th century Europe. These ideas exemplify public things, literally res publica, which is the origin of republic, being paramount, being so important. Now, entertainment and commercial space are very necessary and important, but they only work when people are drawn into public spaces for other reasons, to play in the company of others, to see each other with fresh eyes, and to get out of the private space and into the community. Public space belongs to all of us and allows us to debate with, reflect upon, and ultimately interact with our city. The thing is, most of our public space today is actually private space. Public space where we can congregate freely and do all those wonderful and necessary things we're supposed to do as citizens, well, it's really scarce. Think about Occupy Wall Street. Those folks in Zuccotti Park in New York were ultimately kicked out because they weren't in public space at all. This was commercial space. Or closer to home, you can think about the chapters at Richmond and John, which was a great place where artists and young people could gather and work, but it has closed, and no central piazza has emerged to replace it. And with a harsh climate like ours, Nathan Phillips Square is not really a viable alternative. Actually, think about everywhere you go to hang out and spend time with your friends, and whether or not that's public space or private space, and the answer might surprise you. So now that we've established that public space is scarce, we should note that public space is not natural. It's intentional, it's political, it's contested. It's not just rainbows and pleasant afternoons, it also acts as an instrument of control. Where can you go? Where can you sit? How can you express yourself? Who is legitimately part of our city? This is all ingrained in public space. And our public space in Toronto is not only changing, but it's under threat. Toronto is a wonderful, diverse city and quite old city, but it's a city where the way it develops and looks and affects our lives is controlled more so by developers and corporate lawyers than the urban planners, the artists, and the citizens who have a vested interest in making it a livable city. Now, I was born here, and I've seen Toronto change dramatically over the years. The city I've known, the symbols of my heritage that were here are being raised, and other symbols that I would find meaningful or other Torontonians would find meaningful don't even get built. Indeed, there's a great tension that's threatening the richness of our public spaces. We're in a city divided, to where we have some people who privilege Victorian-era architecture over everything else, And then, perhaps even worse, those who would bulldoze everything to replace it with gleaming towers of glass and metal. This is a problem. If we continue building our city in a way that's more focused on the bottom line than on creating a space that invokes democracy, that promotes interactivity and fosters community, well, Toronto's not going to be worth living in. That's what's at stake here. And that's why this month's Salon focuses on public space. All right, so that was a little heavy. Sorry. So to lighten up the mood a little bit, I'm going to tell you a Salon story. So I hope that everyone has been enjoying the wonderful food we have here from Pangea Restaurant, but it's food with a backstory. A couple of days ago, Margaret and I were chatting about the menu, and she wasn't sure what we would have as dessert. And I told her not to worry, because I have profiteroles on hand in case of emergency, which is when she asked me if I actually have a freezer full of French pastries. And the answer was yes, it is true. Luckily, we haven't had to raid my emergency stash of pastries, and instead we can have great food and great company and hopefully a great night. So, I hope you're all enjoying yourselves, and welcome to Salon West.